You don't get FDN?
Demand it!
That's what Joe said.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. It is great to be back in America. I don't know if you have heard, but I have spent the last couple of days in Israel, where I'm working on something there that I think will be very big, because there are very big life-changing things, world-changing events on the horizon. And I will tell you more as we finalize these events, or the parts of it that we're involved with, as we try to be a force for good. We'll give you more in the coming days. When the media elite celebrated the glorious uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, I was in the back row raising my hand saying, I don't think this is going to be so glorious, especially for America and Israel. Remember? Little Satan, great Satan, kind of the same thing to the people in the Middle East. Not good. Well, how's that working out so far? I can tell you tonight that there is an end game afoot for man's freedom and the Western way of life. And I believe the end will begin in Israel. And if you don't pay attention, it will all make perfect sense when the world turns the heat on Israel. If you're at home and you're thinking, Glenn, why would you be focusing on the Middle East and Israel? We've got huge problems here at home. I hope in the next few minutes you will begin to understand a little more. Israel is the beginning of what could be the end for man's freedom. And we must pay attention and learn from history. I'll show you tonight. Well, hello, America. President Obama, I'm happy to report, is preparing a new speech that's being called a fresh outreach to the Muslim world that will ask Middle Eastern citizens to reject Islamic militancy and embrace democracy. Saying, and I quote, populist movements brewing in the Middle East and North Africa represent the future. End quote. Let me tell you something. He is exactly right, and that should scare the living pants off you, because it's not a bright future. What the people are crying out for in the Middle East and all around the world, including, to some extent, the Tea Party, is freedom. Not democracy, but freedom. And there is a difference. They're totally different things. How's that democracy working out so far in the Middle East? We've seen the Muslim Brotherhood position themselves to take power now in Egypt, for one, which I'm sure is no big deal. They've only said that they will end the peace accord with Israel and start war. But that's crazy talk. I mean, it's not like Egypt and Syria and Jordan and other nations around Israel have ever ganged up on them and started a war. So stop with your fear-mongering. The call now for Israel to be split in two, specifically around Jerusalem, has always been there, but now is a unique time in history. And this is important for every American to understand. For starters, the world is different because instability is higher now than ever before. Capitalism is, what was George Bush saying? It's on the march. Except it's marching the other direction for most of the world. And on top of that, for the first time in history, we have an administration that's not exactly friendly to our allies. Reports now indicate that several Arab governments are pushing Obama to hurry up and outline his plan for the creation of a Palestinian state. Mark my words, this is happening because Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to our country, and Barack Obama has to be first. It will be billed by the world as a way to end the decade-old Israel-Arab conflict. It will not. It will have democracy or freedom march into the sunset. It's important that you understand something about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is already split. It is split into 4 different sections. This is the Dome of the Rock. You've seen this a million times. This is the Temple Mount. This is the Western Wall right here. This is the Southern Wall. And it's split in 4. It's the Armenian section, the Christian section, the Muslim section, and the Jewish quarter. Got it? It's split, and yet it works. I was there this weekend. I walked in all of the sections, and I was free to see everything and how it works. Well, there's a new poll out. Came out in January of this year. It was conducted by the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion. So it was conducted by Palestinians in the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. Most Arabs living in Jerusalem actually prefer living under Israeli sovereignty over Palestinian authority. Why? Because it's stable. Having just been there, I got off a flight this morning at 6:30. I can tell you that in some ways I feel safer in Jerusalem than just about any place else I've ever visited. It's not like you see on television. So if it's relatively stable and it's already divided in four and everybody is protected and it gets along, why would you divide it? Why? You need to divide it to destroy it. Shouldn't we be looking closer at all the other Arab nations around the region that can't seem to grasp the whole living in peace with each other and freedom concept? It seems that Israel, out of everyone else around, is the best place to be, not the one that the world needs to pay attention and fix. That's not me saying that. It's most of the Arabs that live and work with Jews and Christians in Jerusalem. So why the target on the backs of Jerusalem? Well, let's remember, we are the great Satan. Israel is the little Satan. We are one to our enemies. They're not going to wipe one out. Let me ask you this. The great Satan basically means the Antichrist. In the Middle East, they look at the Antichrist not as a person, but an entity or a group. This is the little Satan. This is the little Antichrist. We are the Antichrist. If you were going to just wipe out one, would you do that and stop with one? You need to get both, right? So if you wanted to wipe out freedom, the Western way of life, and America, if you wanted to change the world, what stands in your way? You don't have to answer that. I'm going to let George Soros answer that question. Quote, "The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States," end quote. He also blames Israel for standing in the way of democracy in the Middle East, which, remember, the president just said is the future. Quote, George Soros, "The main stumbling block is Israel. In reality, Israel has much to gain from the spread of democracy in the Middle East, as has the United States. But Israel is unlikely to recognize its own best interest because change is too sudden and carries too many risks," end quote. Yes, when people try to round you up and kill you, you tend to be a little more cautious. So, we won't do it. We stand in the way of a just world, according to George Soros, and they won't understand it. Well, if you're not going to be stopped, what do you do? What stops us from being railroaded? What stops America from crumbling? Well, there's a couple of things. One, money and capitalism, the ability to make more money. Two, the military. Strongest military on earth. Second strongest, I would have to say, I would guess, at least in the Middle East, would be Israel. So, money and capitalism, we have those both in common, and military. And the third would be faith. Let me ask you this. Would you agree that capitalism is being undermined? Would you agree that our military is being undermined by being stretched too thin? And faith, is it being undermined? Is it being weakened or strengthened? Now, if you're going to destroy something and you are part of a society that likes the iconic images, well, then you need some images. You need to make some statements. Why did Al-Qaeda target the World Trade Center? Was it out of happenstance? No. It was targeted because it was a symbol. It was a symbol of our power and our money, capitalism. The other attack on that day happened at the Pentagon. Was that just happenstance? No. That was a symbol of our military. So what's left? You have the power of capitalism and money and the military. The last one is faith. That one is about to be attacked. And I don't mean in a literal sense. A statement is about to be made. A classic symbol of faith. It's happened before. It happened in Spain when the Muslims conquered the Christians there. They tore down a church, a big one, and built a huge mosque. They called it the Cordoba Mosque. They built it directly on top of it. That's the picture. Jerusalem is the center for most of the prominent faiths in the world. It is the key for the Jews and also for Christians. It's where God tested Abraham's faith, and Abraham listened, preparing to sacrifice his own son Isaac. Jesus taught day after day in the temple there and performed miracles there. He was crucified outside of the city and he rose again from the dead in that city. It's where Muslims also believe Muhammad ascended up to heaven with the angel Gabriel by his side. Now, there's more to Jerusalem. In Judaism, it's also believed to be the place where creation began and where Adam was formed out of the dust in the ground. Where did God gather the dust? God gathered the dust right here on the Temple Mount. In the late 7th century, Muslims slaughtered the Jews during the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem. There's been a lot of killing on all sides. But the Muslims then built the Dome of the Rock. You've seen this picture before. It's the most recognizable structure in Jerusalem, and it currently sits on almost the exact spot of the ancient Jewish temple. The rock that it is referring to, in the Dome of the Rock, is the foundation stone of creation, where God took that stone, made it into dust, and made it into Adam. It is the site the Jews believe is the actual literal site of creation. If you're Jewish, you're not going inside of there. I was supposed to go on top of the Temple Mount this weekend, and then it became a political nightmare, so we didn't go. That should tell you something. If you're Christian, you're not going in there either, which is probably a good thing, because if you did, perhaps you would learn something, maybe too much. Inside the Dome of the Rock, and there are no official legal pictures inside the Dome of the Rock, but inside, there are almost 800 feet of Arabic inscriptions that date back to the late 7th century conquest. And here's some of what it reads, quoting, "People of the book," that would be people of the Bible, "do not go beyond the bounds in your religion, nor say anything about the truth about God, the Messiah. Jesus, the Son of Mary, was only God's messenger. His word that he committed to Mary and a spirit proceeding from him. So believe in God and his messengers. Do not say 3. Refrain. It is better for you. For God is only one God. Glory be to him that he should have a son." There's also Arabic writing on the exterior, but I don't read Arabic, do you? The writing right here on the outside for all the world to see proclaims a message to Christians. There is one God. There is no God but God alone, without partner. That would be the Trinity. He is God, one God, the everlasting, who has not begotten and has not been begotten. Understand? He has no children. And he certainly doesn't have a partner or a son. So let's see if we have this right. They built the Dome of the Rock smack on top of the holy site, and they did that for a reason, to announce Islam. After they stamped out, they believed, Judaism, and next was Christianity, and declare it to the world. It targeted the Jews because of the holy location, and Christians with the overt transcriptions, but also holy Christian symbols with the intent of warning them. Now, I'm not at war with Islam, and I know I have friends who are Muslim, and they're not at war with me. But rest assured, many in Islam, in the Middle East, and all over the world have been at war with Judaism and Christianity for centuries. Does that mean that Jews and Muslims and Christians can't live in peace side by side? No. No, because there are reasonable people who are not that different. In fact, there's a great test of it. It's called Jerusalem. It is already split in 4 ways. And the protector of all of our sacred sites is Israel. The argument will be made soon, before the year's end, and I believe in September, that the world will have to protect this, and Jerusalem has to go away from Israel. Well, let me show you what happened when the world protected ancient sites under the watchful eye of the UN. You remember before September 11th, the Taliban destroyed 2 giant Buddhas carved into the hillside almost 2,000 years ago. Islam in Afghanistan was doing their best to erase any trace of pre-Islamic history. They spent days demolishing them, attacking them with rockets and tank shells. The UN did nothing but watch. You can lie to yourself all you want if it helps you sleep at night, but it will not change the facts. Cordoba was named in Spain to mark the crushing of Christianity in Spain. The Blue Mosque in Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, Constantine, that started Christianity, was changed to make the statement that Christianity in Turkey is over. The Dome of the Rock was a symbol. Judaism is over, and Christians take note. Here in New York, the Cordoba Mosque is not a coincidence. But you would have to ignore history if you want to believe that. But that seems to be the advice of both our president here and the possible new president of Egypt. Quote, "The view that Hamas is a terrorist organization is a view that pertains to a minority of countries, not a majority. Being a terrorist is not a stigma forever. In other words, forget history." Well, gosh, it seems to me that there are a lot of people trying to make our history into us being an oppressor. Are we not supposed to learn from others' history? Even if you don't like Israel, you must stand with them. Why? Because I believe the greatest power we have towards freedom is faith, and a symbol of our faith is about to be lost. Radicals have already attacked the money symbol, the power symbol with the Pentagon, and the next, although not a literal target, is our symbols of faith, Jerusalem. And as for that glorious revolution in Egypt, you know, the one the president wants others to emulate, how's that working out for other members of other faiths? How about the Christians? These are pictures of churches under attack in Egypt. Some have been burned and bombed. There's an account from one Christian church leader, quote, "They performed evening prayer 200 meters from the church, and after they finished, they started shouting, 'We want you to leave.' They were shouting, 'Islamia, Islamia, Islamia, with our souls and blood we sacrifice ourselves for the crescent.'" In Syria, Easter was canceled this year. Christians are now being threatened to either join in the protest or leave. America, the honest among us have to ask a few questions of ourselves and then demand answers from our ruling bodies. Why are the Palestinians forming a government with Hamas and Fatah, and why doesn't it matter? Why are the banks in the Middle East already on the go in the green light to form a new Palestinian state? There was a story, do I have the paper? This is a paper I read on the airplane this morning. Here's a newspaper from Israel. Look at this headline. "Israel must present two-state plan or prepare for violence," J Street warns. J Street, do you remember J Street? That's the one that said they don't take any George Soros money, and then somebody hacked into their computers and found out that they do take George Soros money. And then they said it was only a small amount, and that would it turn out to be like 60% of their budget. Why are they warning? What's that? Why is Turkey currently having a defense fair with Russia? Why, when the world is saying no to nuclear power, it's too dangerous in Japan and Germany and America? Is the world cool with Iran continuing their plans and Russia helping them? Do you remember when I said that there would be a caliphate and one of the elitist tweed jacket wearing, pipe smoking snobs, the elite,